Even as the NFL season comes to an end, there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, including live same-game parlays, finding bets in the new Explorer tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, and much, much more. So visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. We'll talk about the NFLPA players poll and where Schwartz came in on that in a sec. But, G, to your point, and I just want to ask this question, and maybe it's ridiculous, but I think it could be valid depending how you look at it. If you think Schwartz is as good of a defensive coordinator as I think we all look at him as, how good do you think this Browns defense could be if you take the starting 11 out and put Jim Schwartz with the backup 11, which do include some really good players like Hickman, Ogbo, Alex Wright, Shelby Harris? They got some ballers on that second unit. Gee, how good could this defense be? Jim Schwartz coaching the Browns' second teamers.
Well, we're going to find out. I think they'll play very well. Like, if you go back to the preseason, they didn't play anybody. They didn't play Myles Garrett. They didn't play, a lot of guys. The biggest name we saw play was like Zadarius Smith. He played like one or two series. But one thing that we saw was we started saying early, if they can't move the ball on these dudes, what it's going to look like when they got all the pieces there. And we started seeing that the first game. I think Jim Schwartz is a very pivotal piece. And the reason I say this is my experience is this. Jim Schwartz holds you accountable for certain things that a lot of coaches wouldn't. I love the fact that he talks about his defense in the public. Because when you make a certain amount of money, I don't believe in that, you don't call your players out. No. When you make a certain amount of money, you have to be accountable. And he does it, and he gives you little nuggets at first. He warns you in practice. Then he warned you a little bit in the press conferences, right? When they were getting gashed in the middle of the season, when they was giving up all them rush yards, he was like, listen, we got to buckle down. We ain't trying to hear about no awards and none of that. The second thing that he brings to the table is this. It's not just his scheme. It's the way he calls the scheme. It's about when he calls the pressures or when he calls the things up front to get people home. And that's the part I think people miss the most. And if you don't have Jim Schwartz, you don't have that mentality. Look at the way that the mentality from JOK to Newsome to Ward to Emerson, some of those other guys. Look how good Taki has looked. He's molded these dudes because he simplifies the game plan. He has them play fast. And it's just not what he's saying, it's what he does in certain downs and distance. So I'm going to see this week. That's why I believe every football game is important. There's only 18 of them. That's what makes the NFL great. You can learn something from every single week that people go out there and play.
Mike framed the question with Schwartz calling the defense and second stringers playing. This Browns defense would be what? So what is your answer to that?
Over a whole season?
Top 5, top half?
Oh, you mean a whole season?
Yeah.
Extrapolated?
What would they be if you took the superstars out? Could they be a top half defense?
I think they could possibly be a 15, 14. Don't get it twisted. The reason the Browns are good is because they got two things every defensive coordinator wants. Rush guys. You got the best rush guy who's going to take up 3-4 blocks, and you can scheme around that. 2, they actually have somebody on the other side that you can't just single up all the time who can get home. 3, they got defensive tackles and waves of them that they rotate in and get money off, and it doesn't matter. They're going to wave them in. And I think almost the most important thing is you got 3 corners that play man-to-man better than pretty much every other corner in the league. You got 3 of them. So now you could double up and do whatever you want to. I think the scheme works hand in hand with the personnel. If you didn't have that personnel, you take Myles Garrett away, Denzel Ward, it's different. Don't act like you could go out there and do that. Like, these guys are special. He got special talent.
Jay?
I can't go any higher than 15 or 20 because, like you just said, when you take away Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, MJ Emerson, I mean, you can only do so much.
Even JOK.
Now. Yeah, I mean, where JOK's at. And now for Mike's question, now you're relying on Siaki Ika to play a pretty big role. And we just haven't seen enough to confidently say. I mean, by the way, when you're talking about all backups still being top 15 or 20 means you're better than 10 groups of starters.
Exactly.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are out of your mind if you think they'd still be top 15.
I said 20.
Come on now.
15.
Listen, this is no insult to Jim Schwartz or the defense. I don't think they'd be the worst in football, but let's compare it here. The Bengals defense this year has not been very good. They've been a bottom 10 defense in the league.
Are they really bottom 10?
Yeah, they have not been good, okay?
Wow, I didn't realize they did.
But if you compare talent of the Bengals starting defense and the Browns backup defense, the Bengals are better in every spot except for maybe safety. That's it. All right, the Bengals would have a way better D-line, way better linebackers, and way better corners if you're talking starters against backups. And the Bengals are bottom 10. So there's no way and you could say, well, they got Jim Schwartz. Well, listen, you want to blame Lou Anarumo for this year? Fine. But until this year, he's been considered one of the best defensive coordinators in the league.
I thought he would get a head coach job.
Exactly. So we can't get crazy. Jim Schwartz is as good, if not better, than any defensive coordinator in the league. And the Browns' backup talent, especially on the D-line and in the secondary, is solid. But their linebackers would be trash. And it's just backups. I mean, you got to be realistic. You ask me this about almost any other team, I'd say it would be clearly the worst in football. With the Browns, I'll say, or maybe they're the 5th worst or the 6th worst or whatever. That's no insult. That's just a reality.
Well,
Come on, 15.
If you say 15, it's only how 32 teams?
You think half the teams in the NFL have a worse defense than the Browns backups? Come on, that's not realistic.
I said at best 20, 15 to 20.
At best 20,
That's what
and I think
said.
that's pushing it.
Yeah, I think it'd be lower third.
Yeah.
I'm with Bull. I just want to be realistic on it. I will say, though, I think it's been proven this year, the Browns have had a number of backups that have gotten quality time that have really flashed. And so it does make you wonder, how much of that is the X's and the O's? But when you take a pass rusher like Myles Garrett out of that group, who really makes so much happen, he makes it easier on all the corners because they don't have to cover for so long. Yep. Why are they the best corners in terms of covering? Because they only have to cover for a short period of time.
1.3 seconds to get pressure?
That's I mean, you can guard a guy for 1.3 seconds. When you ask a guy to guard these top elite receivers for 3 and 4 seconds, you're going to get beat.
Yeah.
So Myles is the straw that makes everything great.
That's right.
He makes all the other pass rushers great.
Yes.
He makes the corners look a little better than they are. For whatever reason, Denzel Ward last year, and we theorized maybe he had something going on off the field, he didn't look like Denzel Ward. Maybe it was the system. But I do think that I don't want to, this is kind of like the Brady Belichick question to me. Is it the system? Is it the quarterback? I think we've kind of learned that it had a hell of a lot more to do with the quarterback
That's right.
than it did with the coach. And in this case, I think because of that lesson that we've learned, I would say that they would be okay.
Yeah.
They would be bottom third, and that's as high as I could put them.
And think about this for a minute. And this is no insult because
No.
any other team, I'm saying dead last.
Sure.
Dead last.
You're talking about, we've got 11 starters out on defense. Any team would fold the tent and go home.
Exactly. But think about this specific example. The Browns have completely had the Bengals number since Kevin Stefanski's been here. To me, the two biggest reasons for that are Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward.
Yeah.
Because Myles Garrett has wreaked havoc against the Bengals.
Yeah.
And Denzel Ward is one of the few corners that does a great job against Jamar Chase. If you didn't have just those two guys, I don't think the Browns win nearly as many games against the Bengals as they have. Not even close.
Yeah.
And that's just two guys, let alone the whole defense.
Now, motivation will play a part in this game because I would like to say that this
specific game, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to say that this is at least sort of the control and the experiment because you've got a lot of the starters going for the Bengals and you've got a lot of the backups going for that Browns defense. So let's see what happens. But you can't measure the motivation. Yeah. The Bengals may have already packed their golf clubs and shipped them to Florida.
Yeah,
so we just can't use this game as say, like if they pitch a shutout, we can't come back here Monday and say, hey, I guess they are a top-rated defense.
And I won't do the opposite either. If the Browns defense gets killed in this game,
sure,
I'm not going to go, oh, see, I told you. Either way.
But also, I mean, we could say this is like a preseason game, but it's really not. You can't rest everybody.
No, they're going to play. Yeah,
they're going to play quite a few guys. You're not. Obviously, they're not playing Flacco. They're not playing. You can't play Amari. Because you can't play Amari with the backup quarterback.
Well, they're not going to play
Moore's
Elijah
not playing
Moore
either, I would guess.
Right.
I don't think Goodwin's going to play.
But on the defensive side, Myles probably isn't going to play. But you're going to and Denzel, I would sit for sure.
How confident do you feel in that he's probably? You said he's probably not going to
I mean, I don't know definitively, but I think probably those guys are going to sit.
We talked about this yesterday. I kind of thought that he would be politicking to play.
Oh, for sure, he wants to play.
get that DPOY.
Miles is gonna want to play, but I mean, Kevin came out the other day and said he doesn't need to play in this game to win.
Great.
Good.
So that tells me he's not playing in this game.
Well, you think Newsome and
I'm only saying you
might
can't.
play?
This isn't a preseason.
You need
game.
bodies.
You
I
can.
know,
There's only so many guys you can rest.
Yeah.
You can't sit everybody.
Yeah, in a preseason game, if your roster is still sitting at 70,
Yeah.
Right, but
then
think
you've
of
got
it.
choices.
Here's my list of absolute not playing.
Yeah.
Would be Flacco, Amari, Miles, Denzel. Absolute.
What about
positively.
Ford and
Beyond that,
even Hunt?
Bitonio?
I think Ford, Hunt, Godwin, Moore,
Bitonio. I'd say
the starting
Bitonio.
guards, the starting center. I don't think any of those guys play.
But
Ogbo's not going to play, obviously.
And they have to be ready. Obviously, one
Yeah.
injury and they need to go in. And you can have Michael Dunn and Nick Harris start on the offensive line. But I think that some people feel like no one's going to play, and that's just not the case.
Fans talk about Bradley Chubb and what happened in Miami. They were down 30. It's the last 2 minutes of the game, and this dude is out probably clearly for this year.
Yeah.
He probably won't be back until mid to late season next year. Does that come up, do you think, with the coaches? Are they talking about these cautionary tales? Or Bull always says you can't live in your fears, you got to put guys out there to play?
I think it's a case-by-case basis. Like with Denzel's injury history, there's no reason to play him.
Right.
With Amari coming off the heel and the fact that you've got a backup quarterback you can't expose him to more hospital balls. We don't know what Jeff Driscoll. Is he going to throw him an ICU ball and now he's out for the playoffs?
Right.
So even without the heel, you can't play Amari just because of the backup quarterback situation. Bitonio, I would rest because he's got the back thing and whatever else. I know Wyatt's been nicked up a little bit at times
why
this
play
year.
him?
So, but at not every spot do you have the luxury of saying.
I mean, the thing of it is, if you take 22, let's just say you took all 22, and the kicker's not starting either, so that's 23 of your 24 starters. I think Bojorquez is going to play. But if you rest the 23, that leaves your roster with 30 guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can call up some guy. Well, I guess there's
You
a
can
limit
two
on that.
practice squad
It's
call-ups.
stupid. They should, for the last week of the season.
yeah,
have that
Bo
be
brought that
bigger.
up earlier this
Yeah.
week. What do you think about that? I thought it was a great idea. Baseball expands its roster in September. I think it's a great idea for football to
for
do
the last
that.
game to be
Or
able to
even the
expand.
last two,
month,
maybe
you know,
3
but
games.
certainly the last game.
Expand
a
it to
lot of
60.
teams are in this situation where they're resting guys.
Right.
Baltimore's doing it. There's a lot of teams that are resting
Yeah,
guys.
I don't know. I mean, then there's other teams who are playing for something, but I guess that's no different than baseball, where there's teams that are playing for something going
Right.
against teams.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
are those guys going to make a difference? Like, you know, I don't know.
One thing I wanted to bring up really quickly before I know Mike's got to do a read. Sometimes good ideas come from people that are furthest away from the fire. And we were taught. I was watching the game with a group of people, and when Hopkins got hurt on the kickoff, someone who is not a football fan that I was watching with said, "What the hell's he doing trying to tackle him anyhow? He's small and slow. He shouldn't even be out there." And I said, "Well, what is he going to do? Kick and then run off the field? He's the last line of defense." And he goes, "No. Why don't they do like hockey? As soon as he kicks the ball, he sprints to the sideline, and an alternative defender comes on at the exact same spot. He can't come on down at the goal line. He comes on at the 30-yard line, and now he's the extra defender. And you know what? At first, it sounded absurd to me, and the more I thought about it, the more I'm like,
Makes perfect
that's
sense.
a great idea.
Makes perfect sense.
I don't
do
want
like
my
that.
kicker making tackles.
Right.
That's true.
Let me ask you guys one thing real quick. We got Tim Couch in 4 minutes, but there was the NFLPA players survey that came out, and they ranked every player to vote on their own coordinator. So just their own coordinator, rank them 1 to 10. They only released the top 5. So there's a chance Jim Schwartz might be 6 by 0.1 points. We have no idea. But Steve, take tag board full. Jim Schwartz wasn't among the top 5 highest-rated defensive coordinators among their own players. It went Aaron Glenn of Detroit, Steve Wilkes in San Francisco, Dan Quinn of Dallas, Brian Flores in Minnesota, and Raheem Morris with the Rams. Just based on the way we've heard the players talk about Jim Schwartz, were any of you guys as surprised as I was that he didn't find his way onto this list? Which, by the way, means nothing. It's kind of ancillary,
I think
but surprising.
I think the headline of the list is completely misleading because they're just every player's voting on their own guy and how much they like them.
You know what?
Yeah.
You're exactly right. When I read it, I thought, well, this is voted on by their own players and only their own players.
Right.
So to me, it becomes which coach is most liked by his players.
Yeah.
And you know what? The best coaches are not always well liked by.
No, that's true.
In fact, when you heard at the Cowboys ceremony on Saturday night when they put Jimmy Johnson into the Ring of Honor in Dallas, he flat said, or one of the players may have said, I was the biggest asshole in the room.
Yeah.
And typically, look at Belichick. Like, guys, there's no picnic playing for that guy.
No.
But if you like to win and you like to be pushed and you like to be the best version of yourself, then, but I think in this case, maybe the best coaches aren't necessarily the most well-received by their own players.
Yeah, and also, like Mike said, I mean, maybe those guys all got 10s from every player, and Jim Schwartz got a 9 from one guy. You know, like, it could be as simple as that.
From a backup who thinks he should be playing more.
Who knows?
For me, I used to be more into politics than I am now. But, I mean, this is poll data, man. I mean, how many times you guys got to learn out there, poll data is not a true guide of how effective or popular somebody is, right?
Yeah.
We be having polling data and be like, his approval rating is at all-time low. And then they get elected. You'd be like, what happened?
Yeah.
Well, look, these guys are, how hard are they thinking about this?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're just not going in there like, now, guys, let's get together and figure out what we're going to give Jim Schwartz. All they care about is winning. And, you know, like you said, that data could be a little bit skewed, you know.
Jay, you have your pulse, your finger on the pulse of the locker room. You're the only one of us that are in there on a regular basis. So you can speak to the camaraderie that they have. Because we talk about the team camaraderie, and I think they have, you know, we talked about chemistry being the most important ingredient to any championship team. That we had a conversation on that earlier this week. What is the camaraderie just among the defense, including Schwartz? Like, how does that group look at one another?
I think it's energized. Like, the whole locker room, it's the best since I've started hanging around that team. This is by far the best it's ever been.
Why do you think?
Because they're winning.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually wrote about this the other day. It was more, I compared Flacco's impact on this locker room to Channing Frye when he came over to the Cavs. And a couple of people were like, what are you talking about? Like, that team had LeBron. I'm like, yeah, no shit, that team had LeBron.
Yeah.
But
this team has Myles Garrett.
But what Channing did was he broke down walls, he broke down clicks, and he unified the entire team. I've seen Joe do that here where he's just energized the entire team. He walked in with a Super Bowl ring, and when he talks, they snap to attention, whether you're offense or defense. More offense, but offense or defense, they snap to attention.
Yeah.
Because he's been there, he knows the way down the path, and he's got the flashlight, and they're all following behind him. So the locker room, we've talked plenty of times about how toxic and dysfunctional the locker room has been over the years, and I could tell you stories about guys punching guys an hour before kickoff, and all that's gone. And
You've never told us that story, by the way.
Yeah.
I'll tell you later.
So you said you can tell us stories.
Yeah.
I want names.
We got to hear about that.
I'll tell you later. But all of that is gone. And that was years and years ago. But this is the most energized and felt like, and they were winning before Joe got here. But just they felt like the season was. I mean, they're not going to say this, but they felt the season was over when Deshaun went down.
I agree.
Everybody in there thought it was over.
But each team has the two factions, the offense and the defense. Can you compare the camaraderie of those groups? I mean, obviously the offense and their leader has changed multiple times. How does the camaraderie and the cohesiveness of the defense compare to that of the offense?
It's hard to say because we're actually not in there a ton. And and I was actually talking to a couple players when I was writing the Channing story about, like, listen, we're not in here a ton, so tell me if I'm totally off base on this or not. When we're in there, a lot of times the players, Tim will tell you, the players aren't in there. They know the media's in there. They're not in there.
Yep. Yeah. So get taped.
So we don't see as much as people tend to think that we do. But I can just tell you that, like, Miles loves screwing around with the defensive guys. And even Amari Cooper, who is the quietest guy in the locker room the last few weeks, has been yelling and hooping and hollering and dancing and getting into it. Like, everybody is having a great – that locker room does have more players in it now than it usually does during media availability.
Well, that's good.
Just because everybody's in a great mood.
Well, when you win,